Welcome back to the Lords of Lore podcast network now. And this is an episode of Ruminations. That is where myself and Luka, say hi, Luka.
Hello.
Hello. We take a book that we've recently read and we review it for you here. So I came across this book actually from you. When we were playing D&D, you recommended this.
Yes.
And your pitch to me was it's sort of like Game of Thrones, but inspired by African lore and legend. And I said, sold. I think I ordered it like the next day. And this is actually one of the first audio books I've ever listened to. Mostly for the audience, I mostly do reading by audiobook, whereas Luka, as you saw, prefers physical. In some cases, I think, right?
Yeah, I do listen to some stuff, but this is actually the first book for me that I got into, like, when I got back into fantasy. When we got
nice.
This is what brought me back.
I feel lucky in that. And I got to thank you for recommending it because, like, I had sort of been off of it for a while. I was reading, like, mostly, like, Star Wars books leading up to this. So this is, like, the first fantasy book I also read in a long time, or listened to, I guess. I'm just going to say read moving forward because...
Yeah, it's all good.
I'm going to correct myself every time. But yeah, and wow, what a book to get back into fantasy, like, right away.
For real.
And I guess I'll just say off the bat, I love this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. If you're out there and debating whether or not you should get this book, here's me telling you absolutely yes, you should buy this book. Support Evan Winter. And this is actually his debut project.
Which is just insane. Like,
yeah.
It's just so good.
I don't know if I've read many other debut, like, obviously growing up, read Harry Potter and all that sort of stuff and random other fantasy novels since reading this one. But it's incredible, honestly. What he did with this book, I think I will be upset by if at the end of my lifetime, this isn't one of the most successful movie cinematic franchises or series, or at least the most well-known fantasy projects of our lifetime, because I think it's that good. It rivals to me things like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings to a certain extent, like obviously not as iconic, but certainly as well written. Like, that seems like high praise, but I mean it. Like, yeah, that's me gushing. How do you feel about the book?
I finished this book, like, the physical copy, I read it in maybe a week and a half.
Oh, wow.
After not having read a book for like a non-school book for probably a good like 7 or 8 years. Like, I don't even know. Like, it was years, and I got through this quick. Like, it just, like, from start to finish, it just never lets up. Like, it just keeps hitting all these beats that are just like, and these hit home so satisfying.
Yeah.
So many scenes.
You really, like, grow attached to the characters in this book more so than I felt because I think especially when you're reading, it's like, maybe it's easier with like television series or like movies where like you have a visual representation of that character, humanizes them a little bit more. But I feel like with books, a lot of the time it's just like, that's a name on a page. And you sort of like, it's just, oh, that's character X, Y, their names don't matter. But in this series, like, I'll try to avoid spoilers here for the first bit. When some of these characters do things or are lost to us, you feel it. Like, it always hurts, or it's always like, yeah, that guy. Like, it's always so earned, the choices these characters makes and like where they end up. Yeah, more so than most other books I've read. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess we could give like a brief overview here. This is very much, or actually, I'm curious how you would describe this book to someone you're trying to pitch it to that's not me. So not the African fantasy beats Game of Thrones.
I feel like, I mean, it's a revenge story, at its heart. It is a revenge story. It's a military fantasy following a young man who's out to seek revenge for certain reasons that we will not get into immediately.
Right.
Yeah, obviously inspired by African culture, which is very refreshing in the
Oh
fantasy
yeah.
genre. The like Western European oversaturated, like everything's England, you know, which is fine, but like it's just like it's not that it's just refreshing, it's just so well done. And like
Yeah.
I love it so much because it's so new and unique and well done, you know? Like
Yeah, it's
it's
definitely
not
something that's not tapped into as much as obviously like traditional European fantasy.
Mhm.
This felt like, I don't know, for me, like I'm a biracial person. For me reading it, it was so like I know people like this. Like I have family members, I have friends, family members who are these characters. Sound and Prentice Oyami, who does the audiobook, this guy could narrate my life. I would pay him millions of dollars to do it. This guy's voice is incredible. And the way he does different characters in this book is honestly, I've never heard an audiobook. And it sold me not only on fantasy again, but on audiobooks. Because this is the first audiobook, like I said, that I had really ever gotten into. And I was like, this is awesome. I can paint miniatures and listen to fantasy. This is the best. And he does the second book as well, so it's really great in that regard. But yeah, it just felt like familiar in that way of like these are stories, some stories that I've grown up with, like the legends sort of that surround them.
Mhm.
uh and yeah, and again the types of characters are like, yeah, and like the voices, like I know that guy. Like, that is someone I've encountered many times. Which like, yeah, like you're saying, like I don't hate a setting that's like when we talked about tropes on the podcast, I don't hate settings or like those tropes that come up because it's part of what fantasy is, right? uh Fantasy for a lot of people is that European
Mhm.
inspired sort of culture. But this is just like I was even reading books after this and I was picturing it the way Rage of Dragons is. And then like the book would say like, oh, his fair skin. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like and like, oh, he pulled out a sword with like, two sides of the blade or like, whatever.
Mhm.
I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, this. Like,
Yeah.
uh yeah, super refreshing. And the way they sort of take some of those European like dragons,
Mhm.
the namesake, I guess, so it's not too much of a spoiler. The way that weaves in is so like they're not like they are dragons that you may have seen in other fantasy, but I guess like what they represent and
Mhm.
how the world sort of interacts with these creatures is
Yeah.
one of the coolest things ever.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's just go. Okay, so if you weren't already sold on the book, this is the last time I'm going to tell you buy the book and read it. Because let's get into spoilers. Because
Let's
I
do
just want to gush about this
it.
book some more. Um, but yeah, okay. So I listened to the beginning of the book again because it is one of the best prologues I think that's ever been written.
Mhm.
Because you're in it. You
Mhm.
don't really
Yeah.
know what's going on. These people are under attack. They've fled to this peninsula, and now they're being attacked by the natives of that place. Um, yeah, you want to talk a little bit about the beginning of the book?
I
Because
mean, it
I
just
could
like
go
drops
on.
you in. It's like 0 to 100. Like you're just instantly in the action, and it's just like it just sucks you in so quick. Like just shows you like immediately like shows you their sort of their hierarchy from the start. It shows you like
Yeah.
a bit of the magic just without any introduction. You get a
Oh, it's
sense
so
of
good.
like the character relationships and like how their society is structured just from like I mean since we're talking I mean it's the prologue like the way the first champion dies and like you
Yeah.
immediately see like the connection between champion and queen and like
And I don't know how many pages that prologue is, but at the time when Siori dies, I'm like devastated. And
mhm,
it's been like less than a chapter of the book. I'm like
man,
absolutely shook.
12
Um,
pages
what's that?
12 pages
Yeah.
of
And I'm
prologue.
already like, no,
Yeah.
he's the champion.
Yeah.
And the way like that scene where he's with like all the military generals and it's narrating from like his perspective.
Mhm.
He's saying, oh, he knew the words that were going to come next and they were going to be near treason. And before the other generals can even speak the word. They're under attack, and it's like 0 to 100, and then the perspective changes back to the Queen Tefa, who's like, in the present day of which the book takes place, because this prologue is, I think, was it like 170 or 180 years prior
it's
to
quite a long
yeah,
time to the
a
past.
few hundred years at least, I think. But she's sort of like the spiritual idol, I guess, of the people, the Omehi people, um, and sort of like the one they sort of praise with saving their people. Most of what's known in the present day is that a race attacked them, this race of pale skinned things, and they had to flee.
Yeah.
And going back to what you're saying, like the introduction of magic is one of the best I've ever seen, because you have no idea what's going on at first. It's just that, oh, they're blasting them with waves of enervation. The natives, what do we, the Jabari people, or what are they called? Not Jabari. Sorry? Zidane, yeah, sorry. Jabari's a character. The Zidane people, they have their own gifts, is what they're called in the book. And we don't really get into them. We see like that one guy who's like reanimating. And then we see like the enervation. And then later on, I think it's probably like 3 or 4 chapters in, when the protagonist Tao, him and Jabari go to that village that's under attack. And they get hit with one of those waves. And then we see what that is oh my goodness, like it puts everything back into perspective. And then yeah, it's sort of, I love how in the book the things that they're doing to succeed are sort of questionable. Like even this use of magic, like how do you feel about gifts, or like what is your, some of your thoughts on like the gifts that we see throughout the book?
I mean, I think it's like really interesting and like sort of a super unique way of doing it, where like you have like the hierarchy of men and women in the world too, where like it's the gifted are always the females, and then like the men are essentially like, even like the most powerful men are just like their tools, like an enraged
Ingonyama.
Like,
Yeah,
it's awesome. Like it's just so cool. And it's like such an interesting power dynamic with like combining the magic and their social hierarchy.
Yeah.
Where like women are powerful in politics and in magic, which is like
yeah, because it is like a matriarchal society.
Matriarchal society. And it's like such another, that's like another sort of inversion of classic fantasy, where like men tend to be the like powerful mages. And
like definitely like kings, and even so much as like the Omehi people worship a goddess.
Yeah,
they don't worship gods. Like, it's so interesting, and I guess like that's maybe how, it's not explicitly said, but maybe that's how their society developed into a matriarchal one. But even so, like with the gifted, who are all women, the gifted could come from any class in society, and it's sort of, if you're from one of the, like you're a commoner, or I think it's called a dredge, which is below commoner.
Lessers.
They you can, if you're born with the gifts and it's random as far as we know, then you could ascend, and you're basically held on the same plateau as like a noble, which obviously would be great if you were a lesser, to then be elevated in that way. But for the men, you're born into the class you're born into, and there is no way, in this book, there's no way for that to change, no matter what. And so one of the main conflicts our protagonist deals with is he was born a lesser, and I think his mother is she's a lesser as well, but she's like a lesser noble. And his father's a lesser as well, and so he was sort of like a illegitimate child kind of thing.
Isn't his mother has a new husband, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. And she has a sister as well, as far as
a half sister, I guess.
Just speaking about that, like the one scene, like one of my favorite scenes in the entire book was when he takes his father's last name, when he calls
Yeah,
himself Tao Solarin, I was like, oh, like that just
so good. He's
so
one
good.
of my favorite characters of all time, Tao Solarin.
Tao, yeah.
Yeah, because
Uh,
so I guess to give some background, early on in the book, Tao is best friends with this lesser noble. I think I'm getting that wrong, but yeah, like bottom tier noble
mhm.
called Jabari, and his mother is she holds some sort of political status in the village they're from. Karam,
Yes.
yeah, the commoner of Karam is his title, Tao. But anyways, Jabari and him are best friends, um, and there's a tournament going on wherein Tao beats a noble uh, in a fight, and he's getting chastised or punished for doing so. Uh, and his father steps in. Eventually, it ends up with one of the nobles ordering another boy closer in age to Tao to kill his dad.
Well, actually, it was so yeah, it was during that tournament where um, one of the lesser nobles kills one of Tao's friends, even though his friend surrendered.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And then Tao, like essentially, he like breaks his jaw and like breaks his leg, breaks his arm, and he's about to kill him, and his friend Uduak like stops
Oh,
his sword.
that's later on. But
No,
yeah. Yeah.
that's what leads to the duel where um after Tao like attempts to kill a few of those nobles, then what Abbasio Dili he
Yeah.
commands Kela and Okar to duel Tao,
Yeah.
and then that's where his father steps in,
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Sorry.
and then Kellan, who is he's a youth also, but he's
Yeah.
a
He's a noble.
yeah
And he's actually the nephew.
nephew of
I
the
want to of the
current
current
champion.
champion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Um,
then yeah, so Kellan has to fight Tao's
and he
father.
takes his arm.
Yeah, he takes his hand or his whole arm. Yeah, he takes his sword wielding arm or hand.
Yes.
Um, but then he's ordered to execute him by
Right.
Abbasio Dili.
Abbasi Abdili, who is essentially the villain of the story.
Yeah, pretty much one
He's
of.
sort of yeah, he's so then Tao after this um he sort of goes on this revenge to all the men that sort of wronged him and led to his father's death now have to die themselves, which is tough because he's again a lesser.
Mhm.
And all the men who did that were able to do that because they're nobles, and they're nobles, so they're protected by like the law. Basically, they sort of just have free reign to deal out death as they choose, um, and they're not evil, so to speak, but there's definitely societal um, issues that sort of stem like systemic issues from the class system,
Mhm.
um, that yeah, definitely, like, it sucks to be a lesser. You're sort of at the whim of the nobles, and so he goes into another tournament in one of the bigger cities after killing Jabari's brother, who's also partly responsible for um, his father's death, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, and so he kills him brutally, and one of the maids lies and covers it up. And Tao leaves his town and uh, takes his father's sword and Gambison and heads to another tournament where he fights against a noble and holds his ground, even though he gets absolutely mangled. He earns the respect of Jayed Aim,
Mhm.
who is assembling a group. Every year, there's groups that get assembled and they compete against each other. And the winner of that get rank in the army, type of thing. So Tao wants to get rank in the army because that'll improve his status, and that way he'll be able to challenge the nobles that wronged his father.
Mhm.
And so basically becomes like a giant montage of Tao earning the respect of the lesser nobles that he's training with, um, and becoming their leader essentially, in a using his swords in like an unorthodox way. He's the only person that used two swords. Everybody looks at him like he's insane, but he's the one that can do it. And the reason is because going back to that first battle we see Tao in, he gets hit with the wave of enervation and sent into the plane of Isiogo. Yeah, maybe you go ahead, break down Isiogo for us.
So Isiogo would be like it's like the alternate, I don't know what, hell, I suppose they would call it. It's like a plane filled with demons and monsters where they draw power from.
It's sort of like the Shadowfell meets like hell, because it's like a reflection of like the real world.
Yeah.
But twisted. Yeah.
And then enervation, they like draw people into Isiogo and hold them there while the demons rip them apart.
Yeah.
Which then like destroys their soul in the real world, essentially. Like they just like go crazy, like clawing their face, and they like start spewing blood, and they're like, because they're they don't physically manifest their like injuries from Isiogo into the real world.
Right.
It's like a soul tearing.
Yeah, it's like well, they can. So there's the demon death, right? That's where if you know how, you can take the energy of Isiogo. And if you do that and you're killed by the demons there, then you die what's called a demon death, which is a terrible way to go out. Your skin boils over and your eyes, like, it's just gnarly. Yeah, basically, you're like burned alive instantly type of thing. But if you don't take in the power, and again, men aren't trained to do this, so they're not able to take in the power, they just get sent to this plane where your physical body in the real world can no longer move. That's why it's sort of used in battles. But in that plane, there's a bunch of demons find you right away and rip you to shreds. And so a lot of people just, they have mental breakdowns, and they either are killed because that's happening in the middle of the battle and their real body is being killed, or they're just never the same again. Yeah.
Which is like such a interesting like dynamic for Magic, not just like as like a magic system, but like for like a military fantasy to be focused on something like this, where it's like, I find that the concept of it so interesting, especially with like enraging Ingonyamas, or like holding people in Isiogo, where it's like, sure, you're holding him down, but he can also reverse that hold on you.
Yes,
Gifted. Where like if a gifted enrages an Ingonyama, the enraged one has to release the hold for the gifted to come back as well.
Maybe we should
hard spoiler warning. By the way,
the enraging is basically like the enlarge reduce spell from D&D.
They like physically get taller and broader and more muscular. They
become like giants basically. And that's done because one of the gifted, a woman, is pulling power from Isiogo, but they can shroud themselves. So the demons don't know they're there, and so they can freely pull power in and give that power to somebody in the real world. But while they have a connection with that person who they're enraging, their shroud is weakening and weakening. And so if the person who's enraged hasn't finished killing everyone around them before the shroud goes away, if they stay enraged, if they don't sever the connection between themselves and the gifted who's enraging them, that gifted is stuck in Isiogo without a shroud. And because they're pulling in power, they would die a demon death. And they're not only are they not shrouded, they're like glowing bright light. So the demons, they're there like even quicker than normal. And it's brutal. And you're sort of like, as the gifted in that situation, you're definitely like at the whim of how proud this enraged person is. And that's sort of how Siori ends up dying in the prologue, is that he was enraged and he doesn't want to kill his gifted because he's a good person.
He releases her and then
severs her tie.
For
better or worse.
As soon as the Ingonyama releases the enragement, like they're essentially left incapacitated in the middle of the
Yeah.
field of battle.
Yeah,
Where
imagine all your
are.
body and muscles just like shrinking.
Yeah,
You know how painful that would be. Yeah. So that's another cool gift. I guess, yeah, maybe the most important gift is the ability, like the call.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get to that later.
Yeah, but like
yes.
adding just that the fact that like that dynamic exists is like so cool
Yeah.
because that's a secret from the men.
Yes.
Like Tao didn't know about that. Like he learned about that from like another gifted, from
Right.
Zuri. Whereas like the normal man would not even know. They would just think like it's sort of like it's entirely a secret that a gifted would have to be released by.
Yeah, and I think
adds
it's
to, like, the
sort of
power
that
dynamic.
class system thing
Yeah,
too, right?
exactly.
Like you're a lesser, you don't ever need to know about this because
Mhm.
the only people who can be enraged are Ingonyama, who are traditionally nobles.
Yeah.
And that's sort of explained actually in the second book, so you'll get to that eventually on why that decision was made. And when you do, let me know because I'd like to discuss it. It's awesome. But yeah, yeah, so you don't need to know because this will never be a thing for you.
Yeah.
And it does circle back to like the unfairness of this world. And I guess the interesting dynamic is that these are the people who consider themselves civilized, and they certainly are.
Yeah.
The Omehi people, but the Zadine, who they share this peninsula with, their enemies, they're often referred to as the savages. And the interesting thing too is that they too have gifts. They can raise dead type of thing. And they have the ability to I think they also have the ability to send messages through what do they call it? Edifier. So an edifier is somebody who they're like a gifted woman who travels real distances in Isiogo. So again, because it's a reflection of our world, you would travel along the same path to get somewhere, and they can travel a little bit faster, I think, while in Isiogo. So they would travel and deliver messages to another gifted who would appear in Isiogo, and that's a way for them to spread messages like basically like a phone call type of thing, which is really cool. And again, the prologue does such a good job at telling you all these things that are happening and not explaining any of them, so that when we do finally get that reveal very early on of Isiogo being this terrible place, we're like, holy shit, this is what they're doing the whole time. Like that first, like in the prologue when it's like, oh yeah, she hit them with the wave of enervation and they all stop moving. You're like, oh, it's like a
stun or something.
Yeah, it's like an electric blast or something. You see what's happening. You're like, oh my god, who's the good guys here type of thing.
Not even that, just like when we talk about dragons too, like how the reality of dragons in the Rage of Dragons, like moral lines are very blurred. Like
and I guess also stated in the prologue is the Omehi people owe their survival to the dragons. They actually follow the dragons to the peninsula. That's how they found where they were going. A lot of them starved and sort of died out while at sea, while fleeing their last homeland, which is called I can't. Do you remember what it's called?
I don't even.
But something.
I remember the people that hunted them.
The people who hunted them were the Call.
Right, the Call.
Yeah. And then I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But yeah, so and they can use dragons. Similar, I guess it's similar to sort of like Bran in Game of Thrones. He can sort of or the women can warg into dragons. Some of them, only some of them are powerful enough to do this. Actually, yeah, go ahead and explain how this works.
It's sort of like it's similar to how they do the enraging and enervation. Like they're also, the dragon holds them in Isuhogo just like an enraged Ingonyama would.
Yes, yeah.
But like the big reveal of like why the dragons help them in the Rage of Dragons. Were like, I mean, I'll just like drop it now, so spoiler warning.
Yeah. Yeah, like, we're way past.
I know, but like the fact that they are holding an infant dragon, and like what they do is like they or they connect with the infant dragon
Mhm.
and like use its cries to
Yeah.
bring the adult dragons looking for their child. And
Yes.
then
Yeah.
when they don't find it, they're like essentially release their rage upon the enemies of the Omehi.
Yeah.
There's just like
It's super
it's
messed up.
yeah, like it's just I mean you understand it's like they were if they don't do it, they go extinct essentially.
Right.
But then it's like
Yeah.
it's
It's
still
it's really dark though. Like that
Mhm.
reveal is because again in the prologue you see that power.
Yeah,
And you're just like, oh, they found the
they have
dragons.
dragons,
Now
yeah.
they can use the dragons.
Hmm.
But they never tell you like they found the dragons because they had to find the young dragon and capture it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess they get the dragon to scream out. I guess yeah, there's again some more explanation in the second book. Um, but not too much of a spoiler. It's like the adult dragons know that they can't save the young dragon. Like at least some of them do, but they come anyways because that's the bond the dragons have with each other.
Hmm.
Like they will try no matter what, even if it's like, you know, fruitless,
That makes
like
it
a
so much
hopeless
worse.
effort. They have to try.
That just
And
makes it so much worse.
it is. And the cool thing and like what I'm really wanting to see moving forward with the series is what happens when they can't. Like what happens when the Omehi no longer have a youth to use as, you know, a bargaining chip or whatever. What happens when the Rage of Dragons comes back to the Omehi people? Like that is going to be fucked up. Like, and they'll deserve it. Like
Hmm.
they're the protagonists, but like they have what's coming to them, I guess.
Hmm.
Like, uh, pardon the pun, but there's so long you can play with fire and not get burnt yourself. um, yeah, it's one of the coolest. And I guess we should explain the hex as well. Um, to do this requires a lot of energy being pulled from Isiogo. So there's one person who's in control of the dragon, and I think there's 6 other people who are there pulling energy from Isiogo and using their shrouds as well
Hmm.
to shroud the main person, as far as I understand. But the problem is one of their shrouds fails first. Always. That's how a hex works.
Yeah.
That person has to admit defeat, basically. They if your shroud fails first, you're the person who's going to die. And there's no way around that.
Yeah.
Because I think the demons need to be drawn to them first. And then they go sort of down the line. So if you can accomplish what you're doing with the dragon before everybody else's shroud fails, they can all leave Isiogo no problem.
Hmm.
But the reason why the hex exists is because now your time spent in Isiogo can be times 6, basically.
Yeah.
One of the coolest scenes is in the prologue where Queen Tefa uses the hex, and then the scene starts with her in a circle with 6 people, and then you see everything through the eyes of the dragon, and then it switches back to Tefa, and it's like, and then she walked over the body of, like, she walked over the corpses of all 6 of the members of the hex. Like, it's just so dark, like, and they give you no explanation at that point in the story, right? It's just like, yeah, that they're dead, so figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, knowing that's how it works, which I guess we should bring up Zuri,
Yes,
who's sort of like the love interest.
Yeah.
Definitely like a huge part of the story.
Hmm.
Character in her own right for sure. Another childhood friend of Tao who actually finds out she's gifted. Before any of the things happen to Tao, she actually unfortunately has to leave and go to, I think, Palm City.
Yeah.
To become a gifted because she got tested and she has it, which is good for her, but obviously sad. His love interest is leaving. And they sort of reunite later on when Tao is participating in the tournaments, the melees, I think they're called, which is cool. It's definitely like a nice love story. I was rooting for it the whole time. It doesn't feel forced. Nope. There's like some kinky stuff that happens, and I was like, yeah, okay.
Nice.
Like, it's good stuff. Yeah, thoughts on Zuri?
Honestly, I wish she was a little bit more explored, maybe, if anything.
Mhm.
I mean, I understand it's like Tao's story, so she's like there to supplement it, but just a very nice character. Like
Yeah.
she's just like a nice person in this world that like that's kind of lacking, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
She's like
Definitely
the
like rare.
yeah, like she's that nice like what to call her? Like a moral guideline almost. Like
Mhm.
even when his father is killed by Kellan, um, and then there's that scene where she tells Tao that she's going to be Kellan's.
Yeah, they're connected.
Yeah, and then but then she tells him that like it's like she's not blinded by like the rage of the moment, whereas like she knows that Kellan did actually was trying to save them. Not he
Yeah.
didn't want to kill Tao's father or Tao. Like he took his arm because he thought that would be enough to spare his life. He's
Right.
no longer a man. He's no longer a warrior.
That scene is so sad, man,
Mhm.
because you know she's right,
Yeah.
but Tao's our protagonist, and so you sort of side with him because
Hmm.
he's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like none of that matters. You killed my dad. Like
Hmm.
sort of reminded me of like the spoiler warning for Captain America Civil War, but that sort of Tony Stark versus Winter Soldier, like, dude, I don't care. Like, you killed my mom, dude. You gotta die. Like,
Yeah.
that's just all there is to it. But yeah, it's same type of thing. Like, and like you understand both sides.
Hmm.
She's playing the middle because obviously she has relationships with both of these people. Kellen's her career, essentially, and Tao's her love interest. And it's sad to see her have to be the middle, sort of like she doesn't really
But like the
like.
worst part about it is
Yeah,
that she's entirely right.
yeah, 100%.
Like Kellen's actually a good person.
He is too, and that's the sad thing is like even nobles in this social hierarchy, they're also at the whim of higher nobles than them.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if he doesn't do it, he might die himself. He
Hmm.
might disgrace his family. His
Well,
family too. I think they bring up.
his
Yeah.
father is dead. He has a mother and daughter or mother and sister who are essentially like if his patron is a Basi,
Mhm.
and without him, his mother and sister would essentially be homeless
Right.
or like without
Yeah,
protection.
because his father was like disgraced or something, right?
I think
Um,
so.
or
Yes.
something happened to him where, yeah. And then also his uncle is the current champion of the
Yeah.
queen.
Hmm.
Um, so
Or of the
yeah,
previous queen, right?
I thought the current.
Because the queen is it's the young queen, right?
Yeah.
He's the old champion.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Like he was the previous queen's champion, and now the new queen still hasn't picked a new champion. And it's like that's why it's like the whole political situation is so like unsure because she's a young queen and she like
Yeah.
doesn't have control of the people, which is why the entire plot of the second half of the book happens. Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah. I think, yeah, let's get into it.
okay.
So while all this is going down, Tao's on his revenge plot, fighting in the melee. Oh, what led to this whole stem of this conversation is that Tao's able to gain as much power as he does because he can take himself to Isiogo,
Yes.
sort of by his own whim, just by putting himself like literally in a dark place. Like he can bring himself into Isiogo, and like the first time he does is terrifying. Like he knows he's not going to die, but you feel like he is. I think
Hmm.
he even shits himself.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Like he that's how he trains. Like he just keeps
yeah,
going back to like learn how to use his sword. Like that's how he becomes a good fighter, which is like
yeah.
wow, man. Like that's
And
just
so all
heavy.
his comrades, they train for like I think like 16 hours a day or something.
Hmm.
Like, and he does as well. And then he goes to Isiogo, where time is sort of weird and
Hmm.
definitely moves at a slower rate. So
Yeah.
I don't know what the exact uh conversion is, but he can spend so much time there and like not a lot of time has passed in the real world. And
Yeah.
that's how he trains more and just begins to like incrementally, but then eventually outright pass all of his peers who were all much stronger than him and all nobles who were supposedly built different. Like
Yeah.
they're just better than the lessers. That's why they have their status. It's
Hmm.
all sort of built on power. But yeah, so while this is all happening, um, we see a scene, I think Tao's spying on Obasio Dilly, who goes to meet with the queen, and some other nobles, but
The
as well as the Zadine
Kaed
people.
and
Yeah.
Jayed, right? He's there too.
Yes. Yeah. Jayed is there. I guess Jayed's whole thing is that he believes these lesser nobles have some sort of difference that'll let them be better fighters. Um, it's sort of like just a theory he has, and by the end of the book, he says I was wrong. Like I don't know if there's any like this is just a thing I had, and you guys are great warriors. I don't know if you could ever beat nobles, but like you've made me proud, and I took a chance on you guys, and like type of thing. Who I think he's also a lesser noble himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's his sort of role, and then Obasio Dilly, obviously,
the high noble.
Yeah, and so they're meeting with the Zadine people because they're trying to broker like a treaty, and I guess the terms of the treaty are they'll give and fill in here because I'm probably missing something, but they're providing their gifted to the Zadine people to teach them the gifts that the Omehi people have.
Yeah, and specifically they give Jayed's daughter.
Right. Yeah. Oh man. Anyways, so that's the deal, and then there's some sort of surrender happening, and there's a union between the young queen and one of the young, I think the son of the chieftain of the Zadine. What's his name again? Something with Kana.
Yes.
Kana, who's and he sort of becomes a bigger deal in the next book, and you see sort of the fallout of what happens later. But so that's sort of the piece, and they're doing it behind closed doors because they don't want their people to know, because this would be the ultimate defeat from the perspective of the Omehi. But they just don't have enough people. The Zadine outnumber them by like the thousands, and they just can't gain any ground. And so they've just been like dying for the last few hundred years at the hands of the Zadine, and it's coming to a point where it can't go on any longer. So this is sort of like their last hope, and a lot of people disagree with it. Obasio Dilly, the chief among them, doesn't agree with negotiating this peace treaty with the Zadine. And so I guess we can jump to what happens next, sort of thing. But Jayed's daughter, she's not. She does teach them, I believe, because I don't want to spoil, but
like I don't know from this. You've read the second. I haven't read the second book. I don't know if we learn more about what happens with her, from the second book, but from the first one, from what I remember, we don't learn anything how she interacts with the Zadine people. We just learn the result of her being sent there.
Well, yeah. So we sort of get how she interacts in that she's a bomb, basically. And I guess it's important to know too, when this is a spoil what we're getting, but when the gifted call the dragons, they're actually like imitating the call of the young, and they have to have the young so that there's they have like I guess proof. Like if they didn't have the young, the dragons wouldn't be looking for the young, so they wouldn't be responding to the call. So as long as they have a baby dragon, they can imitate this call, and dragons will come wherever they go. It's often said like the call for the military is, "Where we fight, the world burns." It's awesome, but it's very true and very sad in the case of the Zadine, because she calls a dragon to herself and just decimates them. And obviously not all of them.
Innocents, like she decimates their women, their children, they're old and sick, like not their soldiers.
Just the men, but the women and children too. She's a bomb, basically. Calls a dragon to her, and because the Zadine number so plenty, they respond because this is like not thought through well enough, this plan. And I think it's is it O'Dilly's plan to do this, dragon call thing.
Yeah, it was
Because
his
it's supposed
plan.
to fail.
Yeah, no, she did what she was supposed to do. Like she
Yeah,
was sent there to essentially reignite the war, which he wanted,
right.
because well, I mean, from what it's, I don't know if there's any deeper motivations yet out of book one, but out of book one, it's like essentially set up where the nobles don't want to lose their control over the Omehi people and their status.
Right.
And by creating peace, it would change the dynamic of their culture and their society. So they essentially decimate these people to keep the war that's making them powerful.
Yeah, and because the queen is young, and was a part of this treaty, Obasi's essentially trying to like overthrow her.
Yeah,
Him,
because they call her sister the true queen.
yes.
He escapes to the capital Palm City, and there he calls her sister the true queen, and like essentially tries to consolidate power there.
So the ruling queen right now, Siora, named after obviously the champion Siori from the prologue. Um, yeah, she's the current queen. She speaks in what is not third person, but
Is the
only in
royal, like the royal we, like
yes, yeah. Um, which is very throwing, especially throughout the second book because he spent a lot of time with that character. It's like sometimes it's like who? Oh, yeah,
yeah, like we, yeah,
yeah,
the
like we
crown.
feel very tired. It's like
Hmm.
what?
Yeah,
I'm good.
I'm super used to that from
Yeah.
fantasy in general, but
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then her sister is what's her name?
oh my god. So she's only mentioned once in like the very
Oh,
end
okay.
from the
Yeah, she
first book.
comes up obviously a lot in the second, because this conflict doesn't get resolved by the end of this book. There's the sort of the final conflict of the book is a battle that sort of takes place between the Zadine and the Omehi, specifically Scale Jayed.
Mhm.
Uh, all of Tao's people. Jayed actually dies in
R.I.P.
this battle. Um, oh man, going back to what you were talking about, that scene with Udwak and Tao, where they kill Chinadu after he yields, because they basically like in one of the melees they outsmart the nobles.
Mhm.
And the climax of that is that one of Tao's brothers, like in the scale, yields, and doing so wins the battle because now they've got the other guys surrounded. He says, "Yeah, I give up. But, like, what are you gonna do about it?"
Mhm.
And the other guy kills him.
Yeah.
Because he's like disarmed and stuff, and it's super sad. And again, is sort of represents that class dynamic
Mhm.
of like, yeah, I'm a noble. I'm just going to kill you. You can't embarrass me on a public scale like this.
Yeah.
And there's nothing they can do.
Mhm.
And that's why Tao retaliates. And I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that scene because it's super sad. Um, again, one of those characters that doesn't speak a lot. He's got this really nasty cough that prohibits him from speaking a ton. But you just feel for it. Like
Mhm.
he just meets his end like in such a terrible way, like such an unfair way. It just
Mhm.
really makes you get behind Tao's character and being like, yeah, the
Yeah.
noble class has to go. Like,
Mhm.
fuck it. Then yeah, so this final conflict is a battle between the Zadine and the armies that are defending the capital, Palm City, or it's not capital city, Palm City, where the queen currently is,
Mhm.
because she's supposed to crown the victors of the melee, the final battle, which never actually happens. Um, and in this battle, Zuri is present, Tao is present, the queen obviously. Tao goes on this killing spree, killing enraged Inglovu and what are they called? The guys who get enraged.
In Gonyama?
Ingonyama. Yeah, just massacring. Uh, like because again, he spent all that time in Isiogo. He's
Mhm.
just a superior warrior to everybody else, basically at this point. Um, and he's able to get in range of Odili, who unfortunately escapes from him because the Zadine are just overrunning the courtyard, which unfortunately leads to Zuri calling the baby dragon, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and spending so long, um, are losing control of the dragon. Um,
It was like her plan from the start. Like we thought that they would use, like, we didn't know. She kept saying like the dragon would be there to support them, whereas like she always
yeah,
had the plan to. She knew they'd
yeah.
need the dragon, but they couldn't
It's
call. There was a reason they couldn't call. They had to use the baby dragon in that moment. Like they didn't have either time to get the. They didn't have a
I
hex.
don't think they had a hex. Yeah,
Yeah. So she needed to hold the baby dragon and use it instead of calling an actual like adult dragon.
right.
And then she, knowing that like she wouldn't be able to, like, she knew that she would have to sacrifice herself, which just makes her character so much better too. But
Yeah, because she holds on so long that now she can't leave. Or
yeah,
I honestly, it's one of the parts I didn't reread because it was fucking
yeah.
sad.
And when Tao also goes into Isihogo to save her.
Oh yes, and this leads to one of the central things in the next book is that
Mhm,
as gifted are in Isiyogo, when their shroud fails, obviously they would be torn apart by demons and die a demon death.
mhm.
But Tao can fight in Isiyogo because he's done all his training against these demons, and so there's one of the greatest. And like again, I can't wait to see this as a cinematic masterpiece of Tao just like going to town on these demons, defending Zuri to no avail. He's just overrun with demons, and as is she. And
But the
yeah, oh my
scene,
god,
like at the end there, where he to save her, he starts to draw Isihogo's power into
yeah.
him to become like a beacon of light to draw the demons to him instead. And then when the queen goes in too to like, because
Oh
she's
yes, this is how we find out the queen is actually gifted herself, which
yeah, exactly,
hasn't
like
happened in a long, long time.
mhm. And like when she sees him like in Isihogo fighting the demons, like just that scene is just like so strong, like.
Yeah.
And then we find about a whole new ability where she can sever his connection to Isihogo
Yeah.
and bring him out forcefully.
Yes. Yeah. 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 You better finish that book.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. It's just terrible. But I seem to remember. Maybe I'm thinking about Jabari, who also gets incinerated here, but doesn't die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jabari is at the end of the book. Jabari, again, childhood friend of Tao, but also I think we skipped over it, but also very much betrays Tao as he's part of Kellen's scale
Mhm.
later on, and very much leads Tao astray and sort of disregards him, sort of rejects ever having known him, type of thing. Then we see them sort of having to fight again together as on the same side, and then he unfortunately gets incinerated by Dragonfire.
Mhm.
But yeah, again, I seem to remember Zuri being burned, but I could be remembering wrong. But yeah, it's just so sad because the whole story from front to back is, I guess, in the driver's seat is this revenge plot, but definitely in the backseat is this love affair between him and her. Should we, shouldn't we can't. You're this, and now I'm gifted. It'd never work. Now maybe you'll become a noble if you win. It could work.
Mhm.
Tomorrow you might become a noble if you guys can win. And then everything goes to shit so quickly. And now Zuri's dead. And
It just hurts so much more because she was his redemption. Like,
yeah,
like when
very much the only person who could ever get through to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like especially when he was like constantly going into Isihogo and like he started seeing demons when he was awake.
Yes.
Like when you were talking about that scene where we were talking about where like they where she tells him that she'll be Kellan's what is that called? I don't remember. Like she'll be the one to enrage him, right?
Yeah.
Like in that
I think it's
scene,
just called Enrager, but I think there's like a name for it, type of thing. Yeah.
Like in that scene when like he's essentially like snaps at her, like he's seeing demons behind her in that very scene. Like it's like his mind is so like warped by like, I don't know, maybe dying hundreds of times a night. Like
yeah. I guess that's one of the important things to note too, is every time he goes to Isiyogo, he has to die in order to come back. Up. Yeah.
And he feels the pain in Isihogo too. Like it's not like
and that's why enervation is such a strong tactic for them to use in battle, because
Mhm.
those people feel like they're dying, and then when they
Yeah.
come back, they're like, "Holy crap! I just died. Now I'm here. I don't want to get up," and that's how they, kill them.
Mhm.
But yeah, Tal, I guess it's sort of having the wherewithal to be like, I know this isn't real type of thing.
Yeah.
But then when he's in his normal life in the real world and starts seeing things from Isiogo, it sort of asks the question of like, okay, is there a tear in the veil between these two realms? Is he starting to lose it and hallucinate, or what's happening? Are these
Yeah.
demons here for real?
Mhm.
And those lines get blurred a lot more in the follow up, because the more someone goes into Isiogo, the less they can differentiate between the two planes.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really messed up. Like literally like seeing demons. Like
And the
like
way they
it can't get
describe it
any
is
more
so
on the nose.
horrifying too. It's
Yeah. Oh
like
my
it's like
gosh. Yeah.
messed up, like limbs everywhere, mouths, like just sharp talons. Like,
I always picture them as like the demons from like Inuyasha, if you know that show.
oh yeah.
Like just like, blah, bro, I don't want to
Oh, do you
like
know? Actually, do you saw?
centipedes with sword arms and like no.
Did you see Love, Death, Robots?
Yes, yeah.
Do you know the episode, like the Russian episode? You
Yeah.
know those ghouls?
Yeah.
I picture those
Yeah,
kind of
okay,
like
yeah.
creatures.
Similar insectoid type. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
just
What a great
horrifying.
show that is. We
Oh
should
yeah,
do an episode about
fantastic,
that. But
absolutely.
yeah, no, Isiogo is terrifying. Like I would never go there. I don't care who died.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. But yeah, so I'm sure that covered a lot of what we love. Is there
Mhm.
anything else you want to talk about? Things you really liked about the book,
Ah,
or specific scenes or characters?
I mean, I have read the epilogue of that book probably like 20, 30 times since I finished it.
Wow.
Just
Yeah.
like the end, like I mean, I have it right in front of me, like just like that ending there, man, would every time I read the like I guess the epilogue and the final chapter. First of all, when he's named champion in the epilogue,
Yes. Oh yeah, we missed that.
like just
Yeah.
that's just, when he pulls out the dragon scale swords with his father and grandfather's handles on them.
Hilts. Yeah.
Hilts, yes,
So
like
good.
just so good. And that this line, like the last line of the book, a dragon had been called and someone would have to die. Like, oh,
Oh, the book is full of those. Like, oh man.
I
Yeah.
love that. Like I got goosebumps just now when I read it. Like I love that. Like just the way it ends too. Like it just like the energy of the book is just so good. But this another scene when Tao finds Abasio Dili and he's like ignoring the queen, like when
Yeah.
he's about to go after him, and like his whole scale is there, and they or like the survivors are there, and they're like kneeling to the queen at attention, and he's like where's Abasio, like ignoring
Yeah.
what's her name, uh the gifted woman that's always with the queen.
Oh geez. I like she's all over the second book. I can't
Naya,
remember. Naya, yeah.
Naya, yeah.
Great character.
Call me lesser one more time. Like,
Oh my gosh, yo, it's one of my let's not yo, say that shit again, bro. You see what I did to that dude?
oh
10
my
feet
god,
tall,
yes.
yo.
I forgot to talk about that scene where he kills the enraged Ingonyama. Like,
Yeah.
oh, when
And
all of that just
because she's is it who's with him when he does that? Is it Zuri or Naya?
no,
Because one of
Zuri's
them is yelling at him like, "You cannot do this! Stop!" And he's like, "Yo, watch this."
no, it's Zuri's already dead at that point, and
Oh,
he, it's like Jabari was fighting. Jabari was protecting the queen, and he could hear the Jabari and his like friends fighting to protect the queen in like in another room, and
mhm.
he was in the hallway with, oh my god, who was it? It was like Or was Zuri dead at that point? I could be lying.
I don't think Zuri was, because if
I don't think
Jabari gets burned the same time Zuri dies, I think.
Yeah.
Like in the courtyard type of thing. Kana would be there too because he was with the queen. But yeah, it's some woman. I think it might be Naya. Or no. It's what it is it's the woman who's enraging.
Yeah, who is the one enraging the when he's fighting?
I don't know if it's a named character. I think maybe someone who served like a similar role to Naya, but has now switched to like Obasi's side. But yeah, that woman is like losing it. And then obviously like the enraged guy is losing now to a lesser. And so his pride won't let him sever the bond with. So I think they both end up dying. And oh my God, it's such a powerful scene. But yeah, I think that's what sort of sets Tao apart, because there's these things he's doing, saving the queen, possibly in doing so, the Omehi people. But it's not out of like duty, or it's not out of like I don't know the word I'm looking for. But like he's doing it selfishly.
Yeah.
Because I don't really care about the queen. Like, cool. Like, I've heard about you. But I'm here to kill Basio Dilly. So where the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
I think that's what sticks him out and eventually leads to the decision of making him the champion. Obviously, like, he's a great warrior, but because he's so devout in bringing down Obasi, when Obasi flees and still has a rebellion going on, that makes Tao a very powerful person to have next to you, I guess. Yeah. So, oh my gosh, so good. That last sequence of battles is just unbelievable.
Honestly, Tao versus that enraged Ingonyama and like the woman enraging him.
Yeah.
Like that's one of my favorite fight sequences I've ever read.
Because I don't think that's ever been done. Or like a one-on-one, anyone beating Ingonyama. Yeah,
not that we know of, for sure. Like it should be impossible. And like the fact, and like all of that combined, like instead of her trying to enervate Tao, she enrages the fighter.
Because it's the pride of the nobles. They don't think a lesser could beat them with any circumstance. Yeah. And they give themselves the advantage, like, okay, try me, bud. Like,
but that
I'm better than you, and he wins.
The fact that he makes that noble afraid to die, which is the reason he keeps the power. Like he knows that if he lets go of the power, Tao will kill him. And it's like just that like the shift of that battle is just like flawlessly done. Just like flawless. Just so
it circles back to like one of his main driving forces as a character is like, I am no lesser than you. Like I'll prove it. I square up. Like it's so good, man. I can't wait for you to finish the second book, because all of the stuff you're talking about is like there's scenes. It's awesome. So I guess before, because you haven't finished that book, we'll move now into things we're looking forward to. I'm going to try my best to avoid spoilers, but I guess things you're looking forward to, expectations we sort of have for the burning, as the series is called, and theories you might have of what's going on.
Okay, so from what I know that Evan Winter has said, it's supposed to be 4 books.
Oh wow, okay.
I'm pretty sure he has said that. I don't know why I'm pretty sure he said that. Anyway, for me, I've already read like the first few chapters of book 2. I've not finished it yet. What I was super excited about for the end of this book was to see, first of all, why, like for me, I feel like I have this feeling that there has to be something else driving the high nobles to want to keep the Zadine in battle. Like I'm curious to see if Abasio Dili's only motivation is his status. I'm not that it'll be disappointing. I just feel like there's something more there. I'm also super curious, because like the world, like what's beyond like this small peninsula they're at and have like not been able to move past for like generations now.
Right.
Obviously super curious about the Cull and like what that is. Like that's just like, oh, we ran away from these unbeatable enemies. Anyway, here's our new enemies. Like in this book, it's just like sets up something that's going to be next, which I'm like so excited to see. I feel like since the magic system has been like so shrouded in mysteries and like deceit from like the higher classes, like I feel like there has to be an evolution of the magic, and like especially something having to do with Tao drawing in the powers of Isihogo into himself from this last. Like I feel like there's definitely has to be an evolution there. My personal theory would be that he's going to be able to find a way to at some point draw this power into himself while he's still in the real world. That is my one theory I have for maybe not book 2, but like I feel like that's sort of where I felt like it was possibly leading with this. Like
there is a great in the prologue again. There is a great scene where they explain it as Queen Tefa splitting her mind.
right.
One, I think she splits her mind into 3. One in the present in her body, one seeing into Isihogo, and one through the eyes of the dragon, all at once.
Right.
She's just that powerful, which could sort of play into that. Based off the things you're saying, I am so excited for you to finish this book because I don't think you'll be disappointed at all.
I'm certain that I won't be. Like this is just, I would call this like one of the greatest books I've ever read.
I would
question.
Definitely masterpiece stamp this.
Yeah, 100%. Like I cannot wait.
I guess I too. The Call to me is one of those things that's sort of glossed over. Like in the prologue, there's definitely a lot of mentions of it, but I think it's a really cool thing, especially like for people watching. If you're writing, or for me, like for D&D stuff, to have something, I guess like Game of Thrones does something similar with like the White Walkers and like the weird black glass that's all over. But these sort of world building elements are super important to have, but they don't have to be story defining. Like you have this thing that sounds like the worst thing that could ever happen. These beings, these pure white beings that are undefeatable, chased you off of your own continent, and you had to follow dragons at sea for how long just to get away from them. But that already happened. Like we don't need to see that until we do. I think that's like one of the most powerful world building things you could, like, there are things out there that nothing that's happening here matters. It's almost like similar to Attack on Titan, and that there is like a within like the walls of Attack on Titan, there's like that power dynamic if you're further away from the center. And then to see that all sort of get broken down as that show progressed, like none of what's happening in here matters. You're all being stupid. Like out there is terrifying, and if that gets here, we're all fucked. So we better just work together. Very similar in like the yo, you could, you want to be a noble, like cool, but like I'm the one that's fighting the wars for you when that shit comes. So like, treat me how you want, but like I'm excited to see how that interaction plays out later on.
Like that's what you're 100% like as a world building element, like the fact that there's like this larger story that like has almost nothing to do with the plot of this book, like the only thing it has to do with is why we're on this continent, like why we're here where we are. That's it. Like this culture is already established from before. Like these people lived this way on their old continent. On the new one, like I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't know for sure, but like there's a grander world out here that they can't even see because they're here stuck on this. I think
it's like a pretty cool, like just you talking about that is like pretty cool, like allegory for like slavery and like how current African heritage people live, being like driven from your own lands by an evil pale force, like and then forced to sort of like rebuild, and the sort of like even like within African American communities, there is sort of like tension between like whether someone's Caribbean like I am, or like Black Americans and Africans. There is sort of like a power dynamic where things aren't always cool, even though like we're all the same people, or came from the same place. Like things are different now for whatever reason, and it's stupid to me. And a lot of races are like that in our real world.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how that's dealt with here. And sometimes there's not answers because like we as humans don't have answers for stuff like that.
Yeah.
So to see how that'll be dealt with as these books progress, I'm like super excited to see. And yeah, I think Rage of Dragons, again, masterpiece status, stamp it. Fires of Vengeance, which we'll eventually cover on Ruminations here. Absolutely to the same level, different type of storytelling. I'd say like I'd want to say like maybe a slower burn, but that's not entirely accurate. Definitely fast paced, but it lets you breathe a little bit more with the characters, I think.
Right.
And in all facets, just as good. So I'm excited for you to finish that. And for people who are watching, this series is unskippable. You must read this series.
Yeah, this is must-read fantasy. Like, if you like fantasy even remotely, like if you're like, oh yeah, Lord of the Rings is a good movie, read this book. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Get the audiobook, anything. Like if you're like Game of Thrones, anything, any fantasy related, anything. If you're like, I kind of like that, this is for you. Like,
yeah,
this has such a wide appeal. Like,
yeah, this is the book when people come to me and ask me for any sort of recommendation with I'm getting into D&D, what are some good influences, or you talk about this book on your Twitter all the fucking time, what is it? Or like this is like a Christmas gift I get for people. Like, yeah, read, I got it for you, there's no excuse anymore. Read the book so I can talk to somebody about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So thanks again for recommending this, because this is just fueled the fire of my love for fantasy books again, and definitely the standard at which I rank books now. So good. Yeah, I think do you have any other things you want to bring up, or
no, just thank you to Evan Winter for writing this, man. Like,
yeah, that's, I should say I won't say I've spoken with him, but I've definitely had some like interactions with him over Twitter. And interviews. By all accounts, a great guy. I think unfortunately just lost his father not too long ago, and dedicated the second book to him. Definitely infused a lot of that in the writing process. Obviously, like Tao, someone who lost their father, I can't imagine for Evan Winter like having to tell the second part of that story while going through it yourself. Probably like really I guess therapeutic in a way, but also like devastating to have to tell how this character is going to deal with it when you yourself don't know. So respect to him, like just incredible stuff. And yeah, a great guy, and definitely deserving of any and everything that's coming his way as far as success for this series.
I hope he gets all of it and more. Like,
I can't wait for this to be the best-selling movie franchise of all time. Like that might be a bold, like, or fantasy at least, because by all accounts, just as good as anything that's ever come out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would be here for like any show, movie, anything. Like,
yeah, absolutely. So that'll do it for this first iteration of Ruminations on the Lords of Lore podcast network. You can check us out on Instagram at Lords of Lore. I think we are on other platforms as well, but I forget them, so maybe I will plug them here. You can follow me on YouTube, Keep Making, or on Instagram at Keep_Making. Luka's not on social media, but that's where you can check in with us and look out for our main podcast that's coming out every I think it's Wednesday. I could be wrong.
Yes.
There's a lot of shows going on here. Also look out for Unabashed, which is another thing we're doing on the podcast network. So thanks for checking this out, and we will see you next time. Will